Welcome to the Reality OS. I'm Peter Duke, and I'm joined by Tracy Connors. And what are we talking about today, Tracy?
Peter, today we're going to talk about the Great Awakening versus the Rude Awakening.
Jesus.
Did you know? Did you know what I meant by that without even having to explain it?
Yeah, but maybe we should explain it to our audience in case anybody doesn't know what we're talking about.
Right, and maybe we should welcome everybody in
Indeed.
and encourage
That's right.
them to share the feed. I'm happy to see that a bunch of people have jumped on to our locals. I put the address for our locals in the description box on YouTube, including I think it's a month or two of free access to the locals platform.
And
Through
I
that
just
code.
and I just posted a bunch of pictures, but Tracy tells me that I posted the wrong pictures to locals. If you've joined our locals, then you can see them, and it's the photographs that I took of the Department of Agriculture when I was in Washington, D.C. that appears to be a cult of Mithras temple. So people can go take a look at that.
No, and I think it reminded Peter. No, everybody wanted the Trump photos from that speech in Washington.
Okay, and I'll do that before the end of the day, I promise.
Okay.
Okay, maybe I'll do it while somebody else is talking or something. Although when I upload it, I think it messes up the stream, so probably
Yeah,
not.
you're still pixelated from doing that, so
Am
maybe
I?
you'll become clear. I think so, but we can hang. You sound good. That's all that really matters.
All right. Well, let's see what everybody else says. But am I pixelated to anyone else? Because sometimes, like, you sound weird to me, but you sound normal to everyone else. So it's just a StreamYard thing. Who knows? So the Great Awakening versus the Rude Awakening. The Great Awakening was supposed to be the Q thing, right?
That was a popular tag, I believe, on those posts. So that was kind of the rights was waiting for the Great Awakening to happen.
Was it the right, or was it just the secret club, the 4chan people who have now all suddenly moved over to GameStop and Reddit?
Right, right. I mean, I think it was a little bit of both. I think that kind of bled over because it bleeds over into the esoteric circles too. They've been talking about the age of Aquarius is here now, and there's going to be a great awakening.
Well, and doesn't Klaus Schwab talk about a great awakening too? I mean, kind of. Well, he's got the Great Reset.
Right.
He's got a different great thing, but
Correct.
I do believe that there is a great awakening. I mean, especially since Trump didn't do anything that everybody thought he was going to do at the end of the
Everybody?
many people. But interesting news, which I think that you hadn't heard today, which is Trump appears to have fired his 5 attorneys that were going to represent him in the impeachment trial in the Senate. And the rumor was that he said that he was going to go, he wanted to go in and represent himself. And I was thinking he should get Mark Burnett and Curtis Yarvin to produce that shit, because the opportunity to make an Ayn Rand style Howard Rourke speech is probably epic, but he would definitely need a writer, I think, at this point.
He should just give that speech.
The Howard Rourke speech?
Yeah, it would totally throw a bunch of people because there are some references in it to housing developments and such, but otherwise it stands. It's a great speech.
I was also thinking he could do Brutus's speech from Julius Caesar. I don't come to condemn the Republic, I come to bury it. Or I don't come to praise the Republic, I come to bury it. That would be pretty good to do in the Senate, you know. He could wear like a little. Well, actually, you know, his hairstyle almost is the golden. What are those leaves that Roman emperors wear on their heads?
Were they holly leaves? Was it a wreath of holly?
No,
We all know what you're talking about.
Somebody in the chat room will tell us.
Yes.
So anyway, so I think that would be epic, because, but he definitely needs a writer, because based on his performance on January 6th, that was like a low as far as energy and as far as communication in the Trump presidency. So if he could get somebody like Curtis Yarvin to write a speech for him, it could be epic.
Well, why don't we just encourage Yarvin to write a speech like that? This is the speech that Trump should give on the Senate floor.
Yeah. Okay.
So we'll meme that into a thing.
All right. Yeah. Well, he doesn't. I don't think he's on Twitter, but we could definitely people could jump on his. He has a Substack called the Gray Mirror, so people could jump on his Substack and start suggesting that he write Trump's speech. I have his email address. I'll just tell him to.
Yeah.
So.
Well, we can collect them if everybody wants to post them in the Telegram or something like that. And Amber's saying, I had heard this too, Amber, that Apple's saying they're getting rid of Telegram. There are videos all over the internet of how to go into your phone and change the settings so Apple can't claw back apps you already have on your phone, so it can't delete them. So I would say go in and change those settings.
And if they do that, we'll just have to set up a IRC chat for the Reality OS that people can't delete because it's running on IRC.
Correct.
And for all of you who don't know what IRC was, before there was AOL Instant Messenger and all of the other 20 messengers that I have on my phone, there was something called Internet Relay Chat, which was free and open, and it still exists. There are still servers out there, and it's open source, so we could actually put up our own server if we really felt like it. And then you just get an IRC client. There are some free ones. There are others that are a laurel wreath. That's correct, Hermes. A laurel wreath. So if this thing goes south, we'll just move to IRC. I think that's the next. I'm not going to go with another Silicon Valley supported application because they just want to stand on your neck. So let's not do that.
Well, Amber, the reason that Parler sits there spinning is because Parler doesn't have a server anymore.
Right. Parler.
Telegram's not getting thrown off its server.
Right.
As of now.
Yeah, they're getting gabbed. Telegram is getting gabbed. So
and sorry, go ahead, Peter.
Gab ran their own servers, but they couldn't get their app on the App Store or on Android. Or when they did, I think that maybe they'd had it on.
They got thrown off.
They had it for a couple of weeks and then it was gone. Is there a blockchain? So
it's coming. It's coming. I don't want to go down the tech road. It bores the hell out of me.
Okay.
I let you do your IRC chat thing, and it's like we can do Peter's Tech Corner on Locals when we hit 100 subscribers. We're at 75 now, guys. So get your friends, and then you can listen to Peter talk about the early days of the internet.
Yes, I was geeking out with somebody on.
So now we're gonna tell a story about how you were talking about tech with somebody else.
Okay, let's talk about the Great Awakening, Tracy.
Let's talk about the Rude Awakening because everybody's asking what that is.
Well, the Rude Awakening is that none of the things that the people thought that they were going to get on the Great Awakening, they got, and instead they get No?
That's not what I meant.
Okay, well then why don't you tell me what you meant?
I meant the left is getting a Rude Awakening.
Oh. Well, I think everybody's getting that. So
I think we're getting a bit of both. See, Look at this. I'm not the only one bored by the TikTok story hours. No, Corgi, he can set up a call with you. You can do office hours with the Professor Peter.
Okay, yes, right. I won't talk about my new radio.
See, Peter, you own the internet, and he's a famous vice president made from Skittles and glitter. It's true.
It is true. Okay, so go back to what you were talking about, Tracy.
I'm just talking about the whiplash effect on the left is the Rude Awakening. So this past week with the GameStop stuff, that woke a heck of a lot more of them up on the left when you see AOC come out and immediately she's like, well, we'll look into whether this needs to be investigated. And then Ted Cruz comes on and says, yeah, I think we should do something about this. I'm calling for hearings. And she's like, you tried to have me murdered 3 weeks ago, sir. Screw you. Donate to my campaign. And then Elizabeth Warren comes out and does the same kind of thing where she's not standing with the little guy. Remember, she's Miss, what do they call that? Consumer Protection Bureau. That was
Right.
her big deal when she first got into the Senate. But meanwhile, she had been a corporate attorney for years protecting all these guys. So the masks are falling off. Glenn Greenwald and Dylan Ratigan were on Jimmy Dore's program, and they're all in on this. They love it. They think it's the best thing ever. Greenwald was like losing his mind about the way that the Democrats are behaving and how pathetic this is.
It's marvelous. I think it's funny. It's interesting that you said how the masks fall off, because one of the pictures that I posted on our locals is that secret entrance on the side of the Department of Agriculture, where it's the bearded face with the mask pushed up on its head. And Pat said that that represents the mask. When you go through this entrance, you don't have to wear your mask. So it seems to be going around Washington, D.C. right now that masks are falling. So what do you think of all of this GameStop stock market hoo-ha?
I love it. I think it's so much fun.
I think it's a lot of fun too. You and I think disagree on this, but I also think that it's kind of a school play, because I'm not sure that the Redditors actually have as much power as they as people are saying that they've got.
Right, but when does it become true?
When does which part become? I believe that the stock market is moving. I believe that the hedge funds are getting pinched. I believe that part of the story. I'm not sure that I believe that it's Reddit that's doing it. I think that Reddit is a convenient story in the case that somebody else is actually doing it. Some intelligence agency that is running a counter hedge fund, or some other investment strategy that's designed on destroying those hedge funds for some kind of economic warfare reason.
Okay.
But I'm a conspiracy guy, so that's why.
Yeah, and I'm into that stuff too. I mean, this would have taken a long time to build, because that Wall Street Bets Reddit has been around for years.
Yeah, so is 4chan.
Yeah.
Right.
No, I know, but they've been talking about GameStop for over a year now on that on that Reddit. So I don't know. I mean, you could be right, but at what point does it just become memed into reality because everybody's saying it that way? I mean, I'm hearing about it at work. One of the women I work with said, my 16-year-old sent me a text saying, Mom, I need to get on Robinhood. How do I do that? I want to buy GameStop. And then I've got boomers asking me how to do this stuff. Like, how do we get in on this?
So have you ever read any of the stories about what happened in 1929 immediately before the stock market crash?
You can tell me the stories.
I mean, you had shoeshine boys asking stockbrokers how they could buy stocks. And so when I hear stories like that, I start thinking, oh, it's the shoeshine boys.
But history doesn't repeat. It has a rhythm, but it doesn't repeat.
Okay.
I'm telling you.
All right.
We'll see. I mean, think about the reason that I immediately said no to you is just to be a contrarian when you're like, I think this is some kind of a thing. And I'm like, nope.
You don't ever do that.
Sure I do.
No, you don't.
So, but then I started thinking about it. I'm like, okay, well, whoever is behind this seems to have the same ends in mind that I do, which is destroying everybody that has power and showing them for the fake and phonies that they are and who they really care about protecting.
And that's the great awakening that I like.
Oh, I like him. I like him for both left and right.
Although if they did punch the price of physical silver, that I'd be very happy about that.
Me too. So that's the next move. But I wanted to jump back. Harry, the answer to your question, how do you interview for a job and not wear a mask? Do a Zoom interview. Done.
Yeah, my ex-wife just got a job, and I believe that all of her interviews were on Zoom.
Mm-hmm. I thought MeWe just got blown up this week too.
What is MeWe?
It's another social media app.
I have 20.
I know.
I have a folder on my iPhone where I put them all in just so that I can keep track of them all, and there's 20.
And Parler's gone. Gab did launch a Discord type chat on it, I think in the past week, or maybe I just noticed it for the first time in the past week. So I'll set up Reality OS over there on Gab chat.
And I still can't get on Gab.
I know but you don't do anything about it.
No. I sent Lauren an email. You told me to send Lauren an email. I may have Andrew Torba's email. If the Lauren thing doesn't work, I'll
Well,
just
I know
talk to
Lauren
Barbara.
just got somebody else all hooked up over there, so I'll tell her to take care of you next.
All right, have her take care of me.
You
I
will
need,
pull out of stocks and crash it to clear out the riffraff. Maybe.
yeah, the story is that a lot of people are going in and they're holding, right,
Mm-hmm.
in order to be able to kind of like force this thing. But the first people who get out at the peak are gonna make bank, and everybody else is gonna be holding the bag. So, because that's just the way things work. Ortel says illegality comes with stock. So the stock market is fake. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
at the end of the day, it's just fake. It's just the uh, kind of public offering version of money magic, where you take nothing and you turn it into something by promising people a bunch of stuff and giving them a piece of paper. And it used to, like, before the internet, in the old days, there was something called a PE, price to earnings ratio. And usually the price of a company was something like 30 times its PE. It's so the amount of money that it made. And starting in the 90s, when the internet companies started getting financed, all of that went right through the window. PE didn't have any. It was kind of like Nixon disassociating gold from the dollar. When the internet happened, the PE got disassociated from the value of the stock, and it really started to become a popularity contest. And which gives, I have all kinds of hypotheses about why that is, but the reality is, the practical reality is that the price to earnings ratio has nothing to do with the value of a stock anymore, which means that it's magic, and it's a popularity contest. And when you start to think that people have their retirement, the thing is about companies like Citadel, hedge funds like that, it's like they do have a direct correlate. There is a direct relationship with other things like banks that could wind up having negative impacts on the stock market that will wind up affecting the rest of the stock market. So that they're not operating in a bubble, they're not disassociated. But at the end of the day, it's all kind of a popularity contest at this point, and that's really dangerous, I think, for people who are literally banking on that a return on those investments, carrying them through things like retirement and old age, things like that. Reddit is left wing. My neighbor thinks it's a war with old money.
I agree with your neighbor.
It is, yeah. Well, and I don't think that Reddit. Again, I don't know if I buy the left or right. I think there's establishment and anti-establishment, and the establishment, the old money is the establishment, and the disenfranchised. I think that there is many disenfranchised. I mean, ask the people who just got laid off at Keystone Pipeline. They're disenfranchised. I heard a guy who was purported to be the head of the Boogaloo Boys on Alex Jones this week being interviewed, and he was talking about how they were coordinating with Antifa to keep feds out of their organizations. Like people would show up at Boogaloo Boys saying that they were ex-Antifa, and they would call Antifa up and say, "Do you know this guy?" And likewise, Antifa was calling up the Boogaloo Boys and doing the same thing. So I think that you've got the establishment, and then you've got the disenfranchised, and the disenfranchised fall on the left and the right. So, and having the Boogaloo Boys get together with Antifa is probably the establishment's worst nightmare.
Yeah. Well, I think all of this whole thing with the GameStop revolution, whatever you want to call it, is their worst nightmare as well. Because you've got the populist left, or the libertarian leaning left, I guess you would say, and the libertarian leaning right. And I've heard those guys on the left saying, hey, we can fight about our policy differences later. Like, we have to beat these people first.
Yeah, and that's not a great scenario. And if they're coordinating with each other in order to keep Fed infiltrators out, then that winds up becoming a nightmare scenario also.
Why does that become a nightmare scenario?
Because the establishment uses sting operations. George Webb said once about what's his name, Andy McCabe, that he never busted anybody for a crime that he hadn't created, because it was all stings. It was all sting operations, and so what they do is they'll, put somebody into an organization, and then they'll get somebody to start suggesting to the other people that they do something illegal, and then when somebody takes them up on it, then they come in and they bust them, and then they make a show trial. It's very kind of like Soviet, communist Chinese approach to law enforcement. And if these people are checking with if the people who are supposed to be enemies with each other are checking with each other to make sure that the cover stories that the other people are using are valid or not, then that's disruptive. That's a counterintelligence move. It's a counterintelligence move. So it's
Right, but the point of the Boogaloo Boys is they're not enemies of Antifa.
That's what they were contending.
Well, maybe I'm not sure who you saw on Alex Jones. I saw somebody on Jimmy Dore's show, and he was saying no, they want to protect everybody's rights, and so they thought they could be armed protection for anybody that wants to demonstrate, because not all of those groups are armed.
Right.
So the guy that I heard was an ANCAP, so he was a right-wing libertarian. If we're going to play that left-right game.
Okay, Michael Voss, Pelosi's son-in-law, met the Navy intel. Met.
He's talking about Jake Angeli.
Jake Angeli, to
Okay.
run the op for Brennan.
So where's if you can show me something that tells me that, I'd be happy to look at it.
Right. And I had dinner with Jason and Paul this week.
Jason and Paul, for those who don't remember.
Jason Rink and Paul Escalon, who are the only two people to have interviews with Jake, and they're still editing and trying to move that project around. And it was interesting because Jake said a lot of things in those Rumble videos that overlap with the kind of Robert Grant free energy, anti-gravity, new age mathematics kind of stuff.
0 point energy.
Yeah. That Paul and Jason hadn't heard about. So I turned them on to Robert Grant so they could go down that rabbit hole. So
I'm sure they're going to take time out to do that.
I don't know. They seem pretty interested. Paul watches everything because he's the editor, so he's just consuming everything.
Right. Interesting.
So yeah.
And did they have any new updates about the doc that we can share? Because I've spoken to Jason a couple times. I just don't know what we're allowed to share and not.
I think it's just they're talking to more people, but I think that they're running into. I think that their current tack is to really sit in Europe because they're getting a lot more interest from people in Europe than they are in the United States of America. And I thought, oh, you're in the Adam Curtis world now, where you can make documentaries about the United States that Europeans can watch that Americans are not allowed to.
Yes. So the Proud Boys right now, I saw a bunch of them got picked up for conspiracy.
2, I think.
I thought I saw a headline that said 6.
Here's talk about buried leads. I read a couple of those stories. Like if you read the headlines, it looks like, oh, the whole organization is getting rounded up like the communists or something. And you read down in like 2 paragraphs from the bottom, it turns out that they got busted for trespassing, for being in the Capitol when they weren't supposed to be in the Capitol. But the entire, 75%, the first 75% of the article is just about conspiracy and all these, crazy theories about this giant organization and how they're cracking down on them. And then you get down to the bottom of the story and it's like, oh, they got arrested for trespassing.
Well, it's kind of like talking about the Rude Awakening. Bill Maher, did you see that he had Brett Weinstein and his wife Heather Heyer on a show on Friday night?
I did not.
Yes. So you're familiar with those two, but for everybody that's not there, Brett was a professor at Evergreen State
Yes.
and got involved in a social justice warrior mob brigade,
He's the less annoying one.
according to you.
Yes, yes.
Yes. Way to not taint the story, Peter. I like the Weinstein brothers. Anyway,
You can like them. That's fine.
so Brett and his wife Heather are evolutionary biologists, and they do a podcast called The Dark Horse. And they've been talking about COVID-19. And I think when it first broke out, they might have been in the Amazon or something. They weren't in the States. And so they returned home a couple months into the whole thing. And so Brett admitted that he immediately was just like, this is clearly, it's just a regular old virus, because he was seeing people saying it was created in a lab. And he's like, no, there's no reason to think that. And then he said he got dinged on Twitter, just lit up by people being like, well, here's this lab that's right down the street from where they're saying this thing broke out. And maybe you want to look at it. And then he started looking into all the data that came out about the different components of the virus. There's a little bit of bat over here and a little bit of pangolin over there. And what is this? And so he started thinking, I think he said on Mar that as of last June, he was 90% certain that it was a lab created virus.
Oh yeah, gain of function. Yeah,
Correct.
Dr. Paul Cottrell, who's in the Harvard Medical School. He hasn't got his medical degree yet, but I think he's got a degree in PhD in molecular biology. He's been contending that for over a year, and
Right.
there's lots of evidence for that. So.
But Mar kind of is on board now. So, of course, this gets skewered. And I only saw it because Eric, Brett's brother, he's a physicist, I believe, or a mathematician at least, works with Peter Thiel and all that. He had gotten into a fight with a reporter from the Daily Beast. I'm trying to find the headline. It was so absurd. So the Daily Beast did a write-up about Bill Maher having them on. And it's like he brings on podcast hosts, not two evolutionary biologists. It's
Right.
two podcast hosts that believe Steve Bannon's theory about lab created corona. I'm like, what? But they had the whole clip in it. Yeah, here we go. Bill Maher pushes Steve Bannon Wuhan lab conspiracy. That's the headline of the story. And you just Steve Bannon has nothing to do with any of this. They didn't even talk about him, I don't think. But they kind of downplay. They make fun of Bill or Brett and Heather, and they're like, "Oh, well, they were involved in this social justice thing, this racist thing." Just we'll paint them with that brush. We'll not listen to anything they said. It was a 15-minute segment where they were pretty convincing that this is probably a lab-created problem.
Right.
And if we had known that and looked into that from the beginning, instead of saying, "Oh no, Trump thinks that," so we can't give that any credence whatsoever. We're going to ignore it. He's like, we wasted a lot of time and a lot of lives. Because if we know that that's the case, then the way that we react to it has to be different.
Sure. And George Webb and Paul Cottrell and Mark Kulak and a bunch of other citizen journalists were contending that a year ago. So it's good to see that people are catching up. I mean, the thing that's really frustrating, I think, about citizen journalism in general, and my first inkling of that was George Webb, is that citizen journalists seem to figure things out pretty darn quickly. And the mainstream media, for whatever reason, is often years behind. All of the Russiagate stuff, all of the things that are, just coming out now with that wrist slap on that attorney from the Justice Department who faked the FISA stuff. Like, people knew about that 3 years ago, and Trump's administration, when they were in power, didn't do anything about it. So that's the frustrating part. What's interesting is the flip side of that coin. We have a video clip of Tim Dillon talking about Clubhouse, but you had me listen to a club that after Davos, there was kind of like, I want to call it the teen club recap.
It was the Babysitters Club went to Davos.
Yeah, the Babysitters Club, or the Mickey Mouse Club.
Yeah, it was called the Great Reset and Davos Debrief.
And you have all of these like indoctrinated multicultural Nazis bioweapon Nazis like talking, and it's great. Well, I want to play the Tim Dillon clips, and
Yeah, and so just so everybody knows too who Tim Dillon is, because I don't know if you saw any of the fallout from one of his tweets from he's on the hold the line side of the GameStop issue, 100%. I think he's gearing up for when we run him for governor. But he tweeted out, I'm trying to pull it up so that I can share it with everybody. But people were sharing it around and thinking that he was trying to spread misinformation. And I'm like, guys, he's a comedian.
Here, let me roll the clip, and then
I've got it.
Oh, you got it?
Go ahead. Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, it's kind of unrelated, but it's still. This is just so you know who Tim is and what his sense of humor is.
All right, here we
Because
go.
he is a comedian, but he gets all this stuff. So this is what he tweeted out. The CEO of Robinhood is Ghislaine Maxwell's son. And people thought that he was being serious.
He could get banned for that at this point.
I know. I'm shocked. And he had a lot of other really good stuff. Like he dressed up as Rachel Levine, our new assistant health secretary. I mean, I'm shocked that he hasn't gotten banned. But
Well,
anyway,
wait till he starts going after Kamala Harris's stepdaughter son thing.
right, but
All
he's joined the Clubhouse app.
Okay.
And so this is him explaining what it's like to listen in on Clubhouse.
Okay.
I'm on Clubhouse now, which is a new app I have invites to, and none of you are getting invites. And everybody on there, not everybody, but a lot of people on there are entrepreneurs, venture capitalists, investors, really, really successful people in the tech space. And this is just listening on this app, which I spend 3 or 4 hours on a night because it's fucking fascinating. I do a little joke every now and then. Everybody goes, oh, Tim's a comedian. Isn't that funny? But I'm a roach in there. They look at me like I'm like a jester that they bring out like, hey, make everyone laugh. And then we're going to talk about, the type of shackles that we get that's going to go right around the arm. Because you're meeting your captors. Some of these people are so young; they're in their early 20s. They started a hedge fund at like 4 years old.
Oh, yeah.
Their Instagram picture is like them tongue kissing Joe Biden. These people are connected. I want those. I want to be friends with them. I want to be friends with the captors. And the app is fun. It's fun hearing how it's going to happen.
It's fun.
Isn't that sick? It's actually fun hearing how they're going to get ya. It's better than TV. Stop watching Ozark. But to Marty and Wendy figure out, who cares? These people are telling you how they're going to shackle you to a floorboard. Listen to them. They love the pandemic. I mean, they're gushing. One guy goes, there's going to be a pandemic now every 5 years. It's just the way the world is now. All the things that can make the world livable, coincidentally, are all the things we've invested in. They are creating a new world, and they just might let you live in it.
I thought it was completely appropriate that you invited me to a Clubhouse room at the time that I was doing the screen capture. It was pretty funny.
Well, I was trying to wake you because you were all down in the dumps, and I'm like, oh, here's a fun one.
Why do you say I'm down in the dumps? I don't think I've been down in the dumps all week.
I mean, I guess it's just via text, and Peter and I were talking about how we probably shouldn't talk about what we heard and what we think. I mean, that was a good summation and a funny thing about what we hear on Clubhouse, but we're going to go behind our paywall on Locals to talk more about the stuff that we hear on that platform because it's really, really interesting.
And creepy.
Well, see, that's where I was like, you're down in the dumps. I'm like, here, listen to this one where they're talking about metaphysics and like quantum mechanics.
Yeah, but that doesn't bum me out. In a way, it kind of like is validating. It's like, you can go around thinking that you're a conspiracy theorist and people think you're crazy, and then you start listening to these elites talking about, I mean, just one thing off the top of my head, they were talking about how terrible it is that 40% of the people in Europe don't trust the vaccinations and 60% of Americans don't trust the vaccinations, and what a crisis that is. And I was thinking, that's not a crisis. That's the best news I've heard all week. What are you talking about?
Yeah, and yes, we are holding back.
COVID comedy.
Yeah.
COVID comedy. It's crazy.
But I mean, COVID has driven all those guys out of LA. So I watched that whole episode with him. It just came out, I think, yesterday. So if you want to check it out, that's his free podcast every week. He does one behind a paywall too, but that's up on his YouTube. And throughout the podcast, he eventually was just like, "We're leaving LA." He had moved from New York to LA about 2 years ago, and he just made the announcement, "I'm out of here. I'm going to Texas. Like, this is absolutely ridiculous." And he's just like, "California is so bad." He's like, "It's like smoking. Every year they tell you how bad it is, and you're like, but I just love it so much. I can't stop." And then you just keep making it more expensive and more expensive and more expensive and more expensive. And he said he just bought a pack of cigarettes and a lighter and gave the guy a 20 and he got back $1 change. And he's like, "That's it. I'm leaving California. I'm going to Texas."
Yeah, I mean, about a week ago, a friend of mine and I went to a bar in Burbank that had a sign in front of it that said "peaceful protest," and would allow, and they serve food. So basically, what they did, you're not allowed to serve food. You're not allowed to have your restaurant open. But what they did is that they called it a peaceful protest, and you could go in there and you could sit down. You could order a terrible hamburger. I mean, it's basically the restaurant that's the kitchen that's attached to the bar that makes the bar food. So you could order this terrible hamburger and fries, but you could do it. You could sit down and order. And in California, that was great. And not only that, but there were actually people sitting at the next table smoking cigarettes, which I just started laughing because it was like, yeah, go for it. It's like eat a hamburger, smoke a cigarette.
Well, I keep
yourself
forgetting to
out.
look it up, but early on there were some studies that said that smoking actually seemed to prevent people from getting the virus
It could,
or
when,
having less severe reactions to it or whatever. It's just funny.
it is funny, the whole thing. And then Jason and Paul and I went out to a restaurant the other night, the first night that they opened up. So, on Friday night they opened up restaurants, but it was like 40 degrees outside or something. So they put heaters out and everybody's kind of like huddled around the heaters and stuff. It's just completely ridiculous. So yeah, they got to open the state back up, and the fact that people are kowtowing to and they're doubling down, they're tripling down. Did you see the stories about doubling your mask, tripling your mask? It's
Yes, that's the whiplash that I'm talking about, the rude awakening. It was like, oh, Biden could stop as soon as we get Biden in there, this thing will be under control. We can go back to life as normal. And then he's kind of like, yeah, no, we can't get it. We can't get it under control. And then you should probably wear 2 masks. And then by the end of the week, we're up to 3. It's just, if you see anybody with 2, I mean, seeing somebody with 1 mask is enough to know to stay away from them. But now 2 or 3, and it's 2 if you're going to fly.
Yeah, my neighbor, I've got a window right here, and I see my neighbor taking her trash out, and she's got her mask on. She's outside by herself. It's like, what do you think is going to happen? People driving around in their cars with their masks on. It's like,
God, I know. Hi, Jane.
hello.
Jane, we did put a contact page up on the site. If you can send me a link to where you've put the tarot cards you want in your shopping cart on Amazon or something like that, we'll get them to you.
Indeed, we did that just for you, Jane.
Yes. I think this is asking Son of Hermes if he has access to Clubhouse, because he was saying Clubhouse is pretty creepy. I mean, I don't know. I think it depends on that app, what rooms you go into.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's. I mean, the people on it are creepy for sure.
Some of them. I mean, the social justice level in some of those rooms is just obnoxious. So Eric Weinstein's on there, and I know apparently you find him to be annoying. But I find him to be pretty interesting. So I wanted to hear what he had to say about
I didn't say he wasn't interesting. He is interesting. I just find him
pedantic.
pompous.
I understand that.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. But there was a room, I can't remember the title of it, but it was talking about GameStop and what's going on with all of this. And so he's a pretty interesting person to listen to, considering that he runs like Teal Capital. So I wanted to hear what he had to say. And he had some pretty seriously interesting thoughts about, he trashed Paul Krugman, and I can't remember who else he threw under the bus as far as being one of the acceptable, expert economists. And just said, we need to quit pretending that these people know what the hell they're talking about or have any idea how to run these systems. Like, these systems have gotten out of their control, and they need to be coming to smarter people and asking their opinions so we can hear some diversity of opinion on this stuff. And he was making a lot of sense. And I don't even remember how it was related to what he was talking about, but he didn't just shoehorn this in there, but he was kind of saying we need to stop fighting about petty little things and concentrate on the fact that our entire system is collapsing, like our monetary system and our political system. And like, now is not the time to talk about reparations or anything like this. And so I don't know how this girl got the mic. She must have been on the stage in that app. So the way that works is they kind of have a speakers panel, and then everybody else is an audience member.
You put your hand up.
Yeah, you put your little virtual hand up.
Yeah.
But this woman was apparently on the panel, and there are no direct messages in the app. I can't DM Peter. I have to go to a different app to send him a direct message. So this woman pipes up and she says, I've been getting DMs through this whole time that you've been talking, Eric, and because it's very problematic that you introduced the idea of reparations and kind of said that they're not that important. And I'm sitting there, like, my eyes almost rolled out of my head. And the moderator just jumped on, the guy that had convened the room, was like, we're not doing this now. Like, we're talking about XYZ. If you want to have that conversation, go to a different room. And what happened was Eric Weinstein left and just started his own room with smart people and like kept the social justice warriors out. So like, this is what happens. We have smart people that actually want to talk about ideas, and then people that want to whine about feelings.
Yeah, and it's interesting because we're kind of doing the same thing. Like, you and I started this adventure because we were having phone conversations, and we thought that we would share our phone conversations with other people. And other people use Periscope, and my friend CJ was breaking the curfew every night, and she would just go out. Her Periscope was just her walking down the sidewalk in Santa Monica, and all of these people would join. That's how I know Hermes. And when you look at applications like Stereo and Clubhouse, they're all kind of trying to do the same thing. They're trying to take generally a conversation between a few people and then make it public in a way that other people can interact if they've got something, a good question or a good
but it's
comment.
Not even good questions or good comments. There's no pre-screening.
Yeah, and that's the problem with Stereo, is that you just get these random
But at
randos.
least we can stop listening to them. With that app, you'd have to be rude and mute the person's mic, and then you may cause a revolt because it's very kind of eggshell walking around on that place.
Yeah, the woman from Davos, who was like, there was one guy who got on.
She was the one that started the panel, who
Yeah.
hadn't been there. She just kind of was like the throne sniffer girl that wanted to hang out with the cool kids.
What was funny, though, is that somebody called up and said, so what was the vibe this year? You know?
But did you see his bio? I got everybody's bio on there. His name is Parker.
No, I did do screenshots of everybody who was in that room, though.
Yep, me too.
Yeah.
But I opened up their bio. So that guy Parker is from the Lincoln Project.
Ah.
He was the one that's like, yo, so what was the vibe like? So his bio is Lincoln Project, U.S. Treasury, Palantir, and U.S. Department of Energy. And I was like, oh, that's interesting.
He's not too spooky.
No, but I also thought that whole thing was a troll. And then the moderator girl got all upset.
And do you think that those are really, because he wrote them in his bio, that they're true?
No, that's what I think. I think the whole thing was bullshit, where he's just like, so it's like a ski town, and like I've been there before. Was it a lot of people just like hanging out? What was the vibe? And then they're like, oh, we had it virtually. And he's like, oh yeah, right, it's COVID.
It was totally like a Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure moment. Beavis and Butthead.
But the idea that they still kept it, secretive, even though it was all Zoom calls, it sounds like. The woman that was moderating it seemed to be so enthralled with these oh, wow, that was so cool that you guys got to be there. It's like, they sat in their apartments and zoomed in. What are you talking about? And the language that they had was creepy, but this is where we're going behind the paywall to talk about them. Because we're not getting got or bounced for as long as we possibly can.
Exactly. But
so, Hayden Harris, I don't know what you're speaking. Was I supposed to send you a message? I don't know how to do so. So let me know what I'm supposed to send you a message about, and I will do that.
Yes, we added a contact form on the realityos.com.
Yes, we did. It's constantly just getting spammed at this point. Well, thank you, Corky.
Thank you, Corky.
Yes, Peter Thiel.
Yes, Teal Capital.
Ah. I think you're talking about Clubhouse. So that's interesting.
Yep, Clubhouse it's interesting. They're trying to they've got like the Facebook marketing strategy, which is like they give you a couple of invites and you can invite people, and then when you open it up, sometimes it says this person wants to join. Do you think that we should let them in? And it won't count against your invites. And it's like somebody I've never heard of before.
Well, there's a waiting list. And it's iOS only. So if you have an Android phone, forget about it.
Yeah, somebody wanted me to invite Lauren, and I tried to invite Lauren, and
Oh, I invited Lauren because she got an iPhone now.
oh, she got an iPhone.
Yes.
Okay.
So she and I were listening to Funny Rooms. I guess, and I still don't even know what the story is, but T.I. and Tiny, so T.I. is a rapper, Tiny's his wife. They've had a reality show for a long time, I guess.
Okay.
There was some scandal that blew up with them. So there was a whole room convened on Clubhouse that I think went on for 2 or 3 days, where it was just people popping in and like talking smack about the two of them. And like, it sounded really crazy. I was like, hey, Lauren, jump into this room for a second. Because we had been in some more serious type of room when she first joined the app. I was like, oh, here, you can kind of hear what this is about. This is, millionaires giving out advice or something like that. It was like, oh, here's where the real fun is, the T.I. and Tiny room, I bet you. And we both jumped in there, and I had to leave because I think it was Thursday or Friday, and I had a meeting to go into. And she was like, oh my God, girl, you missed the best stuff.
Is Lauren using her real name on that app?
You can, if you go into my followers, you'll see her in my
Okay.
follows. She's Lauren, her
Okay.
first name, but she's got her handle
Okay.
on there. So see, she knows about the T.I. and Tiny. So it's like, it almost sounds like they're running an Epstein style thing just from the little bits and pieces that I was gathering.
Well, if you think about it too, like listening in, if you buy the Robert Mercer, not Cambridge, Renaissance Technology story, that the reason that his Renaissance Technology hedge fund is so successful is because they scrape the internet for sentiment analysis in order to determine whether or not they think what people's opinions are about different things. And if you think about it, now that computers have gotten powerful enough, it seems like being able to scrape a bunch of conversations of people talking about random stuff is a really good way to do sentiment analysis for what's going on the planet. And so I see these things as just kind of intelligence assets, whether or not they're state sponsored or not. They are intelligence gathering, because anytime somebody gives you an app for free, you are the product. So you're being farmed for whatever reason. So I'm very circumspect about using those things and what I talk about, and which is why I'm glad that when you and I have these conversations, like, you kind of keep us on the rails.
Well, see, now I want to dig. There's a bunch of people in our chat that know about this T.I. and Tiny thing.
Okay.
So it's like, oh, she's saying Tiny's friend melted down on Instagram after admitting allegedly it might be true, and I'm like, but I don't even know what it is.
Yeah, what is
I just
it?
saw like I think it was allegations of abuse, and like pretty serious.
I don't even know what a T.I. and Tiny is.
Oh, T.I. is a pretty famous rapper.
Okay.
And so they had, I don't know what network ran their reality show, but they've had a reality show going on for years. And they're quite likable. And he's got some decent raps, I suppose.
I don't know. Who's got time to watch all this television stuff?
Well, you just don't have a television. You watch other things.
That's right. Yeah, I've been...
Oh, see? She's saying they're trafficking.
Trafficking.
Yeah, that's what I said. It sounds like they were running an Epstein-style empire.
Look, is trafficking just a kind of class association? Like, is Anna Wintour trafficking? I mean, she decides who the supermodels are going to be, right? And if you're a supermodel, then that means you can up your game as far as potential boyfriend or girlfriend opportunities. And so is that trafficking?
How does Professor Hamamoto watch anything? He seems to have done a ton of research. He must not sleep. And I do think, Peter, that he got a new microphone.
Professor Hamamoto?
I saw that because there is supposed to be a new iteration of that whole web world coming very soon.
Yeah, somebody asked earlier where George is, and if you follow him on Twitter, and if you follow John O'Loughlin, you can usually keep track of, and Addy ads. He always winds up showing up with them, setting up other celebs with hot girls.
That's what they were doing.
Right. That used to just be called Hollywood.
Right. Weinstein blew it all up for everybody. And we'll definitely have Professor Hamamoto on. The only reason we haven't is because we want good quality sound, and he didn't have that.
Right. That was always the picture that I wanted to shoot, is that I wanted to shoot Harvey, Bob, Eric, and who's the fourth Weinstein? Brett. Harvey and Bob Weinstein and Eric and Brett Weinstein in one picture, Richard Avedon style, on a white seamless. Just the four of them standing there. Harvey's out, right? Didn't Harvey get let out of jail for COVID or something?
Oh, no, I don't think so.
No?
Oh, I don't remember.
They didn't put him on house arrest?
Let's see. Harvey Weinstein.
Somebody will tell us in the chat
somebody
room.
will tell us. Yeah, we get messages right away. It just depends on when I throw them up on the screen. I want to traffic my shirt designed by Yves Saint Laurent. Good.
Yeah, I mean, the joke, I used to say this as a joke when I was in the fashion business, that everything in Vogue is for sale. Like, I thought I was being funny. I didn't realize that it was actually true.
Everything's for sale. Didn't your parents teach you that?
My parents taught me there's no free lunch.
Okay. But everything's for sale. It's just a question of how much.
Exactly. So what else, Tracy?
I don't know. Now I'm trying to figure out if Weinstein went to jail or not. Oh, of course. Interesting.
Yeah, that's not a surprise. No. Georgina, yeah, because that's not a convenient marriage.
Yes, it is. So I don't know, Peter. Anything else happened this week?
I spent
Georgia.
I really did try to just kind of ignore what was going on. I spent a lot of time reacquainting myself with Linux. You don't want me to talk about that. And ham radio, and you don't want me to talk about that. And other than that, getting a random phone call like once a day from somebody who was either kind of depressed or dejected about something that was going on, and trying to kind of put two and two together. There's still people out there that think that there's going to be some kind of big Trump response in March.
This is like the doomsday cult where the date keeps getting pushed.
Right, exactly. From the Q cult. I'd love that to be true. Like I'd love all of the other stuff that Q talked about to be true. It's just, Jake Angeli's in jail right now. It's not doing too well. There was the Enrique Tarrio story.
Right.
Where somebody from the Justice Department, it looked like, leaked that he had been
he was an informant. So Enrique Tarrio is the chairman of the Proud Boys?
The international chairman of the Proud Boys. And that story came out right before the two guys got arrested for trespassing, and then that was called a conspiracy.
Right. I mean, I thought it was kind of convenient that Enrique got arrested before the events at the Capitol. After reading that he had been an informant before, I'm like, oh, that's how you pull your informant out before the big thing goes down, is you arrest them so they're not there.
Right. And the story was that he was carrying high capacity ammunition magazines. And if you know the guy, like, that's so not an Enrique thing. Like, I wouldn't even imagine that that is even close to true. And that doesn't seem to be what he was charged with, but that was the story that got leaked. And I do know for a fact, though, because he's talked to me about it, that I think in 2012 he did get arrested, and he was one of these guys who was like, and again, I fact check me. This is the way that I remember the story. As I remember the story, he told me that in 2012 he was making money reselling stuff on eBay. So he would buy things and then package them up and resell them. And there's millions of people who do that on eBay. And I believe that what he told me, again, this is my memory might not be 100% accurate here. I believe that what he told me, that he was buying these like diabetic test kits from like Puerto Rico, because he figured out that because he spoke Spanish, and he figured out that they were selling them for much cheaper in Puerto Rico. And so he thought he was actually doing people a favor by selling them their diabetes test kits for a lower price than they could get them in the store.
Sure.
And so he was repackaging them, and it turns out that repackaging them is a federal crime.
It's a medical device, I would imagine, or something like that you have to meet a certain standard.
That's right. And so he got arrested for that. He got busted for that. And he actually spent some time in jail for that, I think. A couple of weeks. I don't think it was very long. But to mitigate his now, I don't know anything about his being an informant, but I do know about that arrest. So I assume that a lot of that stuff could be true, but it's probably all stuff that happened around 2012, and the Proud Boys didn't even start until 2016.
They started 2014 or 15.
I don't think that Enrique was involved until, well, I'm not sure.
I was watching Gavin's show when he made them up, so it was either 14 or 15.
Right. And it was a joke.
Yeah. Well, he wanted to have a men's organization. It started because Gavin was hanging out with the Knights of Columbus, which is an all men's Catholic kind of men's club. I mean, if you'll remember, like, I think
the Knights of Columbus. Huh?
Yeah,
That's
I know.
Interesting.
Right.
Interesting.
Right. But he thought, this is all old guys. And I like this vibe of being able to hang out with other men and have it not be a thing, just a place where guys can be guys. So let's create something like that and make it about Western chauvinism, was always their thing.
Right.
And they have like 10 or so core beliefs. One of them is like, get rid of the cops, abolish the prisons. Maybe it's not the cops, but it's abolish prisons for sure. Get rid of the drug war. The West is the best. That kind of silly stuff.
Sure.
And then when you want to join, you have to go to one of their meetups and get punched until you can name 5 breakfast cereals. And this turns into like FBI should put them on lists. And
right. And this is one of the things that I talked to Enrique about, was the idea that they treated initiation as a joke. Like, because it was a drinking club and it really was a joke, then their vetting process was that you had to get 2 other Proud Boys to nominate you, and then you got punched until you could name half a dozen breakfast cereals while you were being punched. Well, that's not really kind of like, the Masons, like, they put 3 swords to your neck and tell you that they're going to kill you if you ever betray them. So, like, it's Saturday morning breakfast club. Yeah, it's like the cartoon version of the Masons or something, right? And my point to him was that in a situation like that, it's really easy to get infiltrated by some Fed who's going to set you up and wind up using you as a poster boy for some kind of domestic terrorism rap, because there aren't any domestic terrorists, so we need to go out and grow them ourselves. Right.
And people were warning Gavin the whole time. Like, don't do this because this is going to turn into a thing, and then it's going to be, you're going to get the feds after you. And he didn't believe it. Like, this is clearly a joke. There's hours and hours of video of me talking about the formation of this thing and what a joke it is. But then it went international. But speaking of, I was looking at the blind spot report today on Ground News, and now I'm trying to find the story. But it was something like the left is going nuts about how the Trump administration focused way too much on Antifa and didn't do enough about the right-wing violence. And I just had to laugh. I had to read to the bottom of the
Because
story.
the Proud Boys burned down so many cities.
That's what I was saying. They're like, last summer, Trump was totally, fixated on Antifa and didn't care and let these right-wing militias just rise. And that's what happened at the Capitol. It's like, okay, cut to the footage between those two things. Here's the Capitol, and then here's me showing you a half an hour of non-repetitive video of cities burning across the country for months. And you're telling me their priorities were out of line?
Yeah, billions and billions of dollars worth of damage and tens of thousands of businesses destroyed. Anybody that watched Gavin on Red, I knew it was a joke. Yes, because Gavin is a comedian. And by the way, Enrique is kind of funny too. He's kind of a funny guy.
Yeah, they really are with their projections. And the thing is that this week, some of the reaction to the GameStop stuff when the populist left and the libertarian-leaning left was cheering it on, they got to see headlines that say, white supremacists have now pushed the GameStop stock up above 350. And they're like,
I saw that. It was so funny.
What are you talking about? This is clearly not that.
Well, it's like the Wuhan virology lab as Steve Bannon's story,
Conspiracy.
right?
Right.
Yeah. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter that Fauci signed a $4.7 million contract that's available on the CDC website or the the organization. NIH. There's an organization that Fauci is the head of that starts with an N, and on that website is the contract that they had with the Wuhan virology lab to do gain of function on coronavirus because they needed to move it from bats to humans because it didn't naturally occur in humans at that time. They had to make it occur in humans. So, they've got a really cool cover story about why they thought that was a good idea. And the United States government taxpayer dollars did give the Wuhan virology labs, I think, $4.7 million to do that. So all that paperwork, that's it. And so that's all there. The documents are there. They're on the websites. I haven't seen it on CNN. I haven't seen it on MSNBC. I haven't seen it on Fox News.
But now maybe that Bill Maher has brought on Heather and Brett and talked about this, and Bill Maher kind of said to them, well, how this stuff has been going on in these labs? And they said, yeah. I mean, there was a debate behind the scenes about whether or not these gain of function studies were worth it or not. What are the ethics? What are the safety protocols? Like, should we really be messing with this? And Brett said the guys that wanted to do those kind of studies won out at the end of the day. And that's how we got to here. So he said, this is not a conspiracy. This is a hypothesis that we can test. So I have some hope that this is going to break through with people because it's pretty clear. I mean, he did use some words where I was just like, oh, I'm going to have to look crap up to keep up with him with this terminology. But he made it very, very clear that, say, this is not behaving like a virus we've seen before. It seems to be getting stronger as it mutates, which is not the way that viruses work in nature. A virus wants to live as much as you do. So they become weaker over time. And this one is doing the opposite. And he also said it was really evident to him that there was basically no outdoor transmission. So what kind of a virus is adapted to live indoors, especially an animal spread virus? It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, there was a story I read this morning about Sweden that it looks like they've achieved herd immunity, and even though their mortality rate was a slightly higher for a minute, that it's basically gone in Sweden.
Well, did you see the Tony Robbins rant?
I have not seen it, but I want to see the Tony Robbins rant because I'm reading his book on unlimited power. I think it's an old book from the 90s.
Yeah, it's up on Twitter. I retweeted it. It was pretty. I mean, he was just looking at numbers year over year and saying this is the average number of deaths in the United States for the past couple of years, and we're right in line with that.
Yeah, well, that was always my argument. That
Yes.
when the flu goes to death count was lower in 2020. Yeah, they're going to say because we did such a good job of social distancing, and so we should just always social distance. That's going to be the new thing.
Right. And this was another kind of, the rude awakening that
Right.
Facebook had to admit that hydroxychloroquine works.
Yep. And I still take quinine every day, which is non-synthetic hydroxychloroquine. I bought a pound of it on eBay. I put it in my shake every day.
I'm interested to hear what Professor Hamamoto had to say about Gavin's dad. Man. Yes, I know. We are getting close.
What? Because I'm talking about quinine.
I don't. Probably all of the things that we've been talking about: the Davos set, the quinine, the stabbies. There you go. Yeah. See, whiskey works too. That's a good one. Thank you, Brian.
I do like whiskey. I like my current is Jameson's Black Barrel. My mother drinks quinine water. Yeah, quinine tonic water. The reason I do just straight quinine is because I found out that quinine water has got corn syrup in it. If you go buy like Canada Dry quinine water, it's got corn syrup in it. So I thought I'm not really into the corn syrup thing. You can get diet quinine water that's got aspartame in it, and it's like that doesn't sound like it's good either. If COVID was as deadly as the Spanish flu, we would have 300 million dead. We have 3 million, off by a factor of 100. Yes, if those 3 million actually even died of COVID.
Right.
I mean, we have 3 million people who had COVID when they died. That's the truth.
Allegedly, if we're to believe the PCR testing. I mean, it just, how far back do you have to go?
Right,
The
because
cause and effect chain never ends.
Right, because PCR testing is notoriously inaccurate. As it was explained to me by a guy who worked in a biolab, PCR testing basically takes minute quantities of DNA and then replicates millions of copies of it so that they have enough of it that you can pick it up on a test.
Right.
And he was explaining it to me within the scope of the OJ trial, because they found OJ's DNA inside, or they found.
Yeah,
They found Nicole's DNA inside.
It was in his bathroom, right?
I think it was in the Bronco, wherever they found it. My friend who worked in a DNA lab in Maryland when this happened explained to me that if she had ever been in that car or had ever been in that house, the PCR testing would have found it. That is, it wouldn't be possible for them to not find her DNA. So in any case, so PCR testing finds things that it creates indications that are false positives.
Right. So now they're talking about us having to get boosters. Of course they are. They're going to say this is a flu virus. It's a cold virus, so it's going to
yeah. Now they're calling it a flu. They're saying it's like the flu. You may have to get a shot every year. They want you to get that RNA shot because they're going to do something with it later.
Well, and that was the other thing that they talked about on Mar. Mar said to Heather Heyer, "You've been talking about you won't get the mRNA vaccine. Is that correct?" And she said yes, and he had her explain why. And I thought, oh my God, they didn't pull the plug on Mar. She said, "I'm not going anywhere near that. It's too new. We don't know. We can take the classic vaccines. They'll be fine." That's her opinion, not mine. But I thought that was interesting that they had that conversation on HBO, and the audience applauded.
Yeah, like I said, that was the that was the most interesting part of that conversation, that Davos conversation. They were so distressed by how many people don't believe their story.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's so much alternative evidence out there that you can still find. So, yeah, they had been running. Yeah, didn't the World Health Organization said that we should set the threshold of the PCR tests at 35? And I think some of the European countries had always had that, but the United States was at 45.
Again, it's just numbers to me.
Right.
It's just
It's taking an amplifier and turning it way past 11. So you can either go to 35 or 45.
That's a much better metaphor.
Well, thank you.
I like that.
Yep. They're already doing all of these things, Ron.
Yeah, my father was a physician. He was not a fan of flu shots. He would give you one if you asked for it, but he would never recommend one.
And yes, Brian, that reminds me, one of my favorite moments of all time on Bill Maher's show was when Christopher Hitchens was on there. Do you remember that? And Bill Maher was trashing George Bush and calling him an idiot. And Christopher Hitchens, excuse me, laid into him and said, your audience are trained seals that would clap at anything you said.
Well, and they also have those signs. They have, anybody who's been on a television show before understands that there are signs over the audience that say applause, and they light up, and then they are trained seals. Everybody applauds because there's a warm-up guy that came out before the show started that explains to everybody that when those signs go off that you applaud. So there's actually somebody in a control room who's pushing a button and getting all of those trained seals to applaud like trained seals. So Hitchens was correct. Somebody said staying healthy is
yeah.
Corky, you're right. Staying healthy, I walk every day. I watch what I eat. I exercise. I take vitamin D. Zinc, which is part of a multivitamin. I just do a multivitamin that has zinc and some quinine, and I'm good.
Oh man. Yeah, he was great on Maher. But I like Brian's comment too. This is true of Bill Maher's audience.
I've never seen his audience. Has anyone ever seen his audience?
We're making assumptions.
They don't do ISO shots like the Jay Leno show.
Sometimes they pan across them, I think, because he moves to a different part of the set to do interviews.
Yeah.
He's got the desk part and then the little two chairs. But I mean, it was so ridiculous when he had Heather and Brett on. They were in that little two-chair setup, and they were sitting, I don't know, 10 feet apart. And so they would go to the wide shot, and you're just like, this is so silly.
Is that because of COVID?
Yeah.
Like they live together, but they can't be
No.
together.
Those two were sitting next to each other, but Maher, like they couldn't, if they both reached out as far as they could, they wouldn't have been able to touch each other. I'm like, this is so absurd. But he was home for months doing his show from his backyard.
Only people who work there.
Oh. Of course. But see, if the facts mattered, we wouldn't be talking about people wearing 2 masks now.
If the facts mattered, Trump would still be president.
It's true. Well, how many people, I think we're already at the do you miss me yet stage. And he's kind of disappeared.
Yeah, well, like I said, I think that the impeachment trial, if he decides to represent himself, will be it could be the greatest television event in history.
I don't see why he wouldn't represent himself.
Yeah, I mean, why not?
Yeah. Just get up there and run your mouth.
How about the Mr. Smith Goes to Washington speech? That would be a good one, too.
There you go. What about something that has absolutely no place there? Like Samuel L. Jackson, Pulp Fiction speech.
What, talking about the hamburger royale with cheese?
Yes.
Yeah.
When they're talking to Brad before they blow his head off.
The Grand Royale. Oh, Brad.
Right. When he does the whole Bible passage part. And
that is really an uncomfortable scene.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I started to watch it the other day, and I thought, man, this scene just makes me too uncomfortable. I couldn't finish. Peter was on a call with Ali Alexander for weeks before the 6th.
So?
Peter said...
Nobody was planning storming the Capitol.
No one was planning storming the Capitol. Here's the plan. I'll tell you what the plan was. The plan was the president was going to speak. Then everybody was going to walk down Pennsylvania Avenue. And then there was an area on the lawn in between the Supreme Court and the Capitol where Ali Alexander and Alex Jones were supposed to speak, and the president said that he might come to join them. Okay, but that entire plan went off the rails because while the president was speaking, then insurgents started forcing their way into the Capitol before the president even stopped speaking. So once his speech was over, then the president was not going to come. And Ali Alexander and Alex Jones went to the assigned place where they had a permit to speak. And I went there directly with CJ Pearson because I had walked the entire venue the day before. And when I got to that location, it was evident at that point that whatever arrangements that had been made with the Park Service, in order to have speakers, George can say whatever George wants to say.
Right, but now there's an argument about whether George said it or not.
Okay, it doesn't, and frankly, it doesn't matter.
But it does matter because I don't want you getting wrapped up in all this nonsense, because there's all these different stories about what happened, and there was no Proud Boys planning on storming the Capitol. And if they were, Peter didn't know a damn thing about it. Neither did Ali or any of the Stop the Steal guys.
Right. I mean, I did. I mean, I know that I was with Ali. So basically, at 6 o'clock in the morning, on the 6th, we all had to be in the VIP area, and the president didn't come till noon or something. We were there like 6 hours, and it was like 40 degrees with a 6-degree wind chill factor. So we can't move. Like, when you're that cold, at least if you can walk around or something, like you can warm yourself up. But Brandon Straka was there, Ali was there, the My Pillow guy was there, the Overstock guy was there, Millie Weaver was there. I think what's his name from America First? What's the guy? Nick Fuentes. He was there. There was a bunch of people in the VIP area. And why did Ollie go on the run straight after the event? Ollie did not go on the run.
Where are you getting this information from?
Okay. Ollie did not go on the run. What happened was I went to the area where everybody was supposed to meet. The shit hit the fan. I went and I took a bunch of pictures. Then I wound up seeing Ali and Alex about a half an hour after the melee started. When I say melee, it's like the barricades were knocked down and then everybody went up the stairs to the doors. On the side of the Capitol that I was on, I didn't see anybody go in any doors. I think that was all happening on the front of the Capitol. What happened was Ali, and I have pictures of this, Ali and Alex got together at the place where they were supposed to be speaking and said, this thing has gone south. People came up to us and started explaining to Alex Jones, which I believe he broadcast on his show because there was a guy with a camera rolling the whole time, that there were agent provocateurs that had been breaking windows and breaking in, and Alex and Ali had a conference. I was standing right there next to them where they said, this is a setup. We got to get out of here. And they walked 2 blocks to their limos or their SUVs with their security people, and they got into them and they drove to the OAN headquarters where they did a live stream from the roof of the OAN. So if you call that running away or going on the run or whatever it is that you want, at that point, Ali did start getting death threats and he started laying low. If you want to call that being on the run, you can call it being on the run, but he's trying to not get killed by people who are making death threats. So
people that are lying about him.
Yeah,
or result in death threats.
Yeah, or people are lying about him, lying about the Proud Boys, lying about all of this other stuff. So, I was with Ollie the whole time that this thing was going on. There was no collusion to storm the Capitol. And in fact, there were people there who had fake credentials that said March on the Capitol that I have pictures of that were not part of any credentialed organization that had anything to do with what was going on that day. But I haven't posted them because I'm just letting that take its natural course. Set up, oopsie daisy, huh?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, it was. There
It was
a
a
setup.
setup.
Yeah.
I mean, the lack of planning on, the lack of planning on the White House's part was pretty bad. I mean, the crowd control was pretty bad. There was none. I mean,
Right,
there
but
was
they're not responsible up at the Capitol.
they weren't.
So, who's that on? The event organizers? I don't know.
Like I said, the event organizers had planned on a peaceful Martin Luther King style march up Pennsylvania Avenue. It was not what happened. So, which goes to show you that when you look at things like the Women's March that happened, right after Trump got elected, and how many millions of people were there and how organized it was, it's like you really have to understand the millions of dollars and the thousands of people that are involved in making an event like that come off. Tracy's favorite word, walkies. It's like lots of people with walkies.
Yeah.
Permitted means cops do their job. I don't know what that means.
Yeah, I think he meant permitted, not like they had a permit.
Yeah, they had permits. Right.
Yeah,
They
and the
pulled
cops got out of the way and let people go in there. There's plenty of videos that I've seen of them opening gates.
Yeah, well, there's videos of people opening gates. There's videos of people smashing windows. There's pictures of cops letting people in. There's pictures of cops having altercations with people. There's pictures of cops shooting people. It's like I guess it all depends on what entrance you went in, what was going on, who the people were that were involved. But yeah, there's lots of cool stories out there about Ali and about the Proud Boys and about all of these other things. But I was there. I watched what happened, and it was an event that went completely off the rails. Somebody's saying Pelosi is responsible for the.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe,
Well, I would think as Speaker of the House, she might be responsible for Capitol security.
Yeah. They had there were 4 organizations that had come together. Basically, there were 4 organizations that decided that they all wanted to do the same thing at the same time, and the White House said, "You guys all have to play together." And so that was the people that were in the VIP area were the contingents of 4 different organizations.
All right. Well, we'll see how it all plays out with everybody. So Ali is still, he hasn't been arrested like Brandon Straka was, right?
No, but Ali didn't go in. I mean, Ali and Alex were standing on the outside going, "Man, this is not good. This is not what we had planned. We should get out of here before we get blamed for it."
Right. And there's video of them having that discussion and video of Alex on a bullhorn saying, "Everybody get the hell out of here."
Right. I may be in that video because I was, I don't know, 3 feet, 4 feet away from them when it was happening.
Okay. Derek Wilsonson. That sounds like a real name. Let me tell you something. Peter could be a Proud Boy if he put on a MAGA hat and Fred Perry shirt?
Fred Perry shirt, yeah.
Like, let's get real here.
STS.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have the map.
Yeah, there were stages. When we had Jason on here to talk about his experience there, he said he was waiting at the other stage. He was waiting at the stage at the Capitol for the speeches to break up in the ellipse and people to come down. So
Yep.
there was definitely a stage set up there. That's where Alex was supposed to speak. It's where Ali was supposed to speak.
And it was permitted by the Park Service.
Yeah. See, I think there's some discrepancy about whether Brandon went inside or not.
Yeah, I don't know that. I think that he posted a video of something that happened inside, and people assumed that he was inside. I'm not sure what the story is there, but
Well,
I
I'll be
didn't.
able to ping
But
us out.
I'll tell you this: I didn't go inside because I thought, that's a line I'm not going to cross. And FBI is lost. Where the hell is the FBI? Okay, so the FBI. The FBI that was created because they made alcohol illegal so they could create the FBI.
Yeah, it's never been on your side.
Yeah. J. Edgar Hoover is the chief blackmail officer of the United States of America, and the FBI is basically the Department of Blackmail. It's the racket that controls the other rackets. 10-year-old Macallan. Yeah, I used to drink 18. 25's good, too. 25 Macallan. Like that.
Okay, well, we'll find out. But just think through it yourself logically. You think a bunch of guys dressed all the same in the uniform of a group is going to go breach that place?
Right, and this is this was one of the things that I had noticed when I was looking at my pictures. And, we went, if you go back a couple of episodes, and I did show some of the pictures.
Sorry, my dad had to weigh in here. He's trying to educate the trolls too.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's what did they call that? Bird dogging?
Yes, bird dogging. Right.
Yeah, with Bob Creamer, which is what Peter yells at these people. Who do you work for, Bob Creamer?
or Brett Kimberlin. Right, yeah, exactly. Because those are the guys who organized those people.
Yeah.
So the one thing that I did notice when I saw the agent provocateurs, the people that I assumed were agent provocateurs, is that, the problem with Stop the Steal is you could go to the stopthesteal.us website and you could buy sweatshirts and T-shirts and hats and all this other stuff. And it's like, if you're creating an operation where you want to like frame somebody else for doing bad stuff, go buy their gear, because and that's the problem with grassroots elements. It gets back to that of how easy it is to compromise a populist movement, is that if they're selling T-shirts and hats because they're trying to pay for hotel rooms and permits so that they can organize the thing, then it makes it really easy for somebody who wants to cause trouble to get a uniform that makes them look like they're part of the organization in order to go and create havoc. And I think that you see that with red hats. I think that you see that with the T-shirts and the sweatshirts that people are wearing. There's all kinds of I have lots of pictures of people who have red hats on. They have like a black beanie on, like they've pulled their black, like Tim Pool black beanie, and then they have their red hat on top of their beanie, and it's like, that's not the way MAGA people normally wear their hats. It's just not. It doesn't look right. It doesn't smell right. There's something weird about it. And these are the people who are knocking the barricades down. These are the people who are screaming and yelling at the cops. Like, all of the MAGA people that I've ever seen yell at cops is, "We love you. We love the cops." Like, they're always like getting there. It was so bizarre. I saw pictures of people screaming at cops at the same time that people were getting selfies with cops, like on the top of the Capitol steps.
Well, it's almost like there's a split now. I think I've talked about it a couple times here, going to lefty protests and seeing that there was a clear divide between kind of the peace and love hippie set and the burn it all down group. And maybe there's been a cleave on the right. I don't know. I like to believe that there isn't, but that's probably just wishful thinking. And I do think when you're in a crowd like that and stuff gets amped up and there's a lot of energy, there could have been people there from the left that were plants that galvanized that energy and said, "Hey, let's go for it, guys." I mean, reading Mike Waller's his account of that day was pretty interesting, because he's a guy that's trained to look for those things, and he said he saw some clear signs that there was an organized group that are the ones that kind of steered the crowd.
He's a guy who used to work on those operations in South America.
Right.
So anyway, here's a troll. This is kind of a trolly question. Cernovich being a traitor? A traitor to who?
Right.
A traitor to what? I mean, look, Mike's got his opinion. He's not he's not a go with the flow guy. He calls things the way that he sees them. And I don't know how that's being a traitor. Unless you're an ideologue and you think that Trump walks on water and can't do anything wrong.
Yeah, I mean, Mike was disappointed with him from the beginning, him being Trump in this scenario, because there was that whole site that they built. Send your resumes in, come work in the White House. And a
I
lot
did
of people
that.
really, yeah, so did I. And we got other people to submit their resumes, and they didn't take anybody from that. And so when that happened, Mike kind of said, you know what, guys, it's going to be the same business as usual
Ann
kind of
Coulter
deal.
too.
Yeah.
Ann Coulter was, she's not been a big fan of the president for a year and a half, 2 years.
No, and the way he left office, it was kind of like, well, did I really just make believe for 4 years thinking that he was somebody that he wasn't? Because I didn't expect him to go out without a fight. And
Yeah,
I mean, it was
without
fight,
without a declassification of something, without
a pardon or two.
a pardon or two of some people that needed them. Yeah, that was the most anticlimactic thing I've ever experienced. Human energy is always steered. I am human and a battery at the same time. Yay.
It's true.
I guess.
Okay. And maybe a passionate ideologue. But now hearing that, and if you go back and look at Cernovich's tweets from 2016, 2017, you'll see that he turned pretty quickly and was like, this isn't what we're hoping it is, because these little things aren't falling into place. If he was really a populist that wanted to change Washington, he would fire everybody that was there. I mean, think about how many times he got screwed over by somebody that was a holdover from a previous administration.
Right, and that was the whole thing. It was like we all knew that there were bad people around him when he came in. And nice picture. We all knew that there were bad people around him when he came in, but man, it never got better. And Ali actually told me that he went to a dinner with Jared Kushner about a year and a half ago, and Jared Kushner had said that they spent the first 2 years figuring out that all of the people that they hired were either inept, incompetent, or traitors.
It took him 2 years to
and
figure that out.
And it took them 2 years to get rid of them all. I don't think they ever got rid of them all. I don't think they got rid of them all to the last moment. I honestly, I think that Trump was completely surrounded by people who were disloyal. Every single one of them.
Including Jared.
And I don't think that Jared thinks that Jared is disloyal, but I think that Jared's agenda was not the American agenda. So,
Yeah, exactly.
he hired Barr. Yeah, Barr was a big mistake. Will Chamberlain loved Barr. Will Chamberlain wrote all of these great things about Barr. Barr is going to save the Union. Barr is going to save... Come on. I like Will, but forget it. I don't agree. So yeah, Barr is the cleaner. He's Leon the cleaner from La Femme Nikita. He's the guy who comes in and cleans up the mess when somebody else makes a mess. He cleaned up Iran-Contra. He cleaned up BCCI. He cleaned up, I think, BCCI. He cleans up messes. That was his job. That's what he did. And Mark Kulak has gone way back in his history, and he's got all kinds of connections to the Manhattan Project and all kinds. He's as deep state as you get. And he may be his pedigree may be deeper than America. I mean, as far as the deep state is concerned. So that was never going to work out. And it was obvious to a lot of people. But at the end, the things that he did have personal agency for, he could have gone against what everybody was telling him and pardoned Assange and Snowden and Ross Ulbricht. He could have done it. He could have declassified the JFK papers that he said he was going to in the first year. And then he pushed it back 6 months, and then it didn't. I think it didn't happen. There was all kinds of things that he could have done. There's, Sundance over at Conservative Treehouse basically laid out an entire program the day after the election for how he could declassify things by sending federal marshals over to the CIA with warrants and seizing the records and bringing them back and dropping them on the Resolute desk and then posting them on social media. In order to be able to get them out into the world. There was all kinds of smart people who who had great ideas about how he could save his presidency even after the election seemed to have gone south. He didn't do it. So it'll be interesting to see what happens if he. I really want to see what happens if he is going to defend himself in the impeachment trial, because that has.
Do you actually think they're going to hold a trial?
I think they have to.
No.
They don't?
I think they can table it. And then, I mean, Rand Paul gave a great speech on the floor of the Senate, which I would imagine everybody saw, but if you didn't, go check it out, where he was talking about how ridiculous this is. And you can't impeach a private citizen. Like, there's no constitutional authority to do that. It's just absurd, and it's a waste of time, and we need to move on. Okay, let's knock it off. So I guess maybe if they want to use it as a distraction from how pathetic this first week or so has been for them. I mean, it's bad.
Well, it'd be good for CNN, you know. So Debbie says that Trump choked. I'm not saying that he choked. I'm saying that he might not have been the guy that we thought he was. Like, choked if we assumed that he was this cartoon character that we had created in our minds with between Q and MAGA and the memes and all of the other stuff. We built this reality. That's why we call this the reality OS. We built this reality of our own where we actually thought he was this guy. And if he was that guy, then he choked. But maybe the reality is that he never was that guy. And that's kind of what I think that Cernovich and Coulter have been saying, John Derbyshire, for a long time, which is that he's not the guy we think he is. And my best example of that is probably I worked, my crew worked with Sabo and put together that Ted Cruz badass poster, 6 or 7 years ago, with Ted Cruz with the cigarette dangling in his mouth with the tattoos. And Sabo made the poster, and we put it out, and then I helped with the media on that. I helped get Ted Cruz to sign the poster. And somebody on Ted Cruz's media team put out a great tweet that said,
I thought it was Cruz himself. Oh, I see what you're saying. Through his account.
Through Cruz's account, it said, I saw the poster that they put up in Hollywood. It was very nice, but you got one thing wrong. I don't smoke. And the joke is that the guy was covered with tattoos. Well, that tweet went viral, and that really created the Ted Cruz badass meme, that Ted Cruz was this guy, this out-of-the-box, speaker who understood social media and the culture and all this other stuff. And that's all horseshit. He doesn't understand that stuff. He's an Italian who wears cowboy boots.
He's Cuban.
What?
He's Cuban.
He's a Cuban Italian.
Oh, okay.
So he's, but he wears the cowboy boots, and he looks like he should be wearing Gucci loafers. He'd look better in Gucci loafers, I think.
I'm sure he has them at home.
I bet you he doesn't. I bet you he doesn't.
You don't think? Isn't his wife? Where's his wife? Is she at Goldman Sachs?
Goldman Sachs, wealth manager.
And worked for the Bushes. The Bushes introduced them, didn't they?
Yeah, I believe they were both in the Bush White House. Yeah. So anyway, but the reason I'm telling this story is because we memed this Ted Cruz badass thing into existence, and I was talking to Steve Bannon on July 30th, 2015 about trying to do street art for Ted Cruz. And we had a long conversation about Donald Trump and whether or not Donald Trump was going to make it. And what I said to Bannon was that because we were talking about Andrew, and I said, well, Andrew said politics is downstream from culture. And if politics is downstream from culture, then Ted Cruz is downstream from Donald Trump. And he looked at me and he said, do you think Donald Trump is going to win the election? And I said, if culture is more important than politics, then Donald Trump has got more power than Ted Cruz has got. And that turned out to be the case. But the reason I'm telling the story is because we had memed Ted Cruz into this Ted Cruz badass thing. And what happened with Trump is that you had people like Carpe Diem who popped up, who just turbocharged. He's so creative. He's so good at taking these messages and then crafting them in a way that they become so effective and viral that they wind up making everybody believe that this person who at the end of the day is a human being who drinks Diet Coke is a superhero. And maybe he's just a human being that drinks Diet Coke. And that's the reality of it. And I think that that's kind of where we're at right now. So I'd like to see if that's not true in the trial, the Senate trial. But I won't be surprised if he comes out and does the same lame ass shit that he did on the 6th, because his speech on the 6th was pretty weak. I got good pictures. My pictures were better than his speech.
No, you're right. And I'm just sitting here listening to you and thinking about how they've basically been hiding Biden. As far as I can tell, I've paid very little attention to the news. I just see the things like Jen Psaki's confronted about what's going on in the stock market and what Yellen thinks, and how can Yellen weigh in on this at all, considering that she gave speeches to the tune of $800,000, and the response is something like, "Well, she's a woman."
That's
and
more
expert.
that's more than Bill Clinton was getting.
I know, it's
speeches.
outrageous. 800 grand for a speech. I can't think of anybody on the planet who deserves that much for an hour worth of their time.
Right. Madonna doesn't get that.
No, she doesn't. But I'm just wondering with this populist moment, because you've seen people over this past week, like Dave Portnoy, I've been following him for a while. And, you know, he stepped into the breach when the checks weren't going out and businesses are falling, are failing left and right. And he organized that Barstool Fund, which last I checked, had $33 million. And they've saved so many businesses. So he's been doing that. And then when they shut down sports, he started trading during the day and kind of reimagined himself as Dave the day trader. So with this GameStop stuff going crazy, he's kind of become the focal point. He and Elon, who have both been against the regulations and the government screwing everything up, and they've become these populist heroes of sorts. And I'm wondering if where that goes. Like, if somebody's going to rise to, like, this is our 2024 person this far out from 2024, just because Biden is nowhere to be seen. He's not on Twitter making comments. They're not doing a lot of videos. He just seems to be able to sign a couple papers and then he's got to go back to bed or whatever they're doing with him. But there's a giant void there right now. And Trump has been quiet.
Yeah, it's interesting. When you listen to the radio bands, I listen to radio bands sometimes at night.
This is on the ham?
This is on GMRS.
Okay, I don't know what that means.
I think Channel 20. I was listening to two guys talking about politics, and that one of the guys was a Trump guy, and he was talking about how terrible Trump is, and the other guy was a Biden guy, and he said, look, he goes, the thing that I'm happy about Biden being president is that the president won't be in the news every day. That's what made him think it was okay that Joe Biden was the president, was that the president will stop being in the news every day. And it was a hard argument to fight against.
Right.
It's like,
No, I understand that. I do. But then there's times when you kind of want to hear what the president thinks, and he's just nowhere to be found. And I know that the left has been disappointed by some of the things, at least the far left. There was some executive order that's now, I guess Trump put something into place where health co-ops or, local health clinics had to give insulin to people at a discounted price, something along these lines.
right.
And this was done back in December, and Biden overturned that. So it's just like he just comes in and makes insulin more expensive, and nobody's going to scream and yell about it, or is it just they don't know?
Well, it's not the only people who know are the people who have to pay the bill, because CNN isn't going to report it, MSNBC isn't going to report it, Fox isn't going to report it. So, if it doesn't get reported. So somebody thought that Ted Cruz was a Cuban Canadian. His father is Cuban. His mother is Canadian, but her heritage is Italian. So that's the deal.
Interesting. All right.
I'm trying to make sense of the comments. Cruz had the best campaign ad in 2016. What campaign ad was that?
I don't remember it.
There was an ad that Owen Brennan made.
That could be it. Those guys are pretty good.
Yeah. Madison McQueen.
Mm-hmm.
They do good stuff. With
They
all
do.
the algorithmic evidence burn team. Maybe. Whatever happened to all of this stuff? Release the Kraken and all the evidence, and just blew away like dust.
It's November sweeps.
It was November sweeps.
I'm serious. It kind of just went away. It's all for television. But I'd be interested, Peter. I guess there was a big anti-vax protest at Dodger Stadium.
Yesterday, yeah, exactly, yeah. And one of the guys, when I was on CJ's Periscope last night, there was somebody that was recommended to me as a ham radio expert, and I went to go check him out, and he had blocked me. So I went on to Firefox Focus to find out what it was about this guy that I might be on an auto block list. They have those. And this guy was a very pro-vax. He's a ham radio guy, but he's very pro-vaccine, and like everything that he tweeted was like, "Oh, you got to get the vaccine. Here's how you get the vaccine." And then he had all of these posts about how the terrible people, because I guess there was a big mass vaccination event at Dodger Stadium yesterday, and there were protesters that got in the way and basically created a traffic jam. So that I think they had to cancel the event or something.
Mass vax event. It sounds like a Stephen King novel.
Did you see the pictures? It looked like a Stephen King novel. It's so scary to me. It's so scary to me how many people are running to get this thing because they think it's going to save them. It's so sad.
It is sad. But maybe Darwin was right. This is natural selection, and they're selecting to check out. I don't know.
Right. Well, we're all going to go at some point.
Yes. Yeah. That's true.
Anyway. What else?
I don't know. Does anybody have any questions? Yeah. See, there's no Kraken, guys.
There's a Kraken. It's in the Pirates of the Caribbean movie.
And yes, stocking. Redheads should not wear pink. Can we just say that?
Yeah, and her brother works for Citadel, right?
Yeah, that's what somebody, Hayden, said that up here. I believe
Yeah.
so. And Citadel is the they own Robinhood.
I think
controlling
that
interest.
I think that they're majority interest or something.
And they bailed out the Melvin Fund.
What's the Melvin Fund?
Melvin Capital, I think that's what the name. I know it's Melvin for sure, but I'm not sure if it's Melvin Capital or whatever. That was the hedge fund that was hugely shorting GameStop. I keep saying GameStop, and they jumped in and bailed them out. I believe. I don't know. Portnoy was going back and forth with the guy. He's the guy that owns the Mets. Also owns this other hedge fund that bailed out the hedge fund that was going under because of their shorts. And so, Portnoy runs Barstool Sports, so he's already hated the guy for being the Mets owner for some reason or another. And then he fought with him on Twitter, and the guy left Twitter. But I would say, if everybody wants to laugh, go watch that entire Tim Dillon episode, because he laid into those guys too. He's like, it's so rich to watch these people go on CNBC and cry and talk to you about how they're just trying to protect you. He's like, they're full of crap. And then you go over to Clubhouse. He's like, they want you never leaving your house ever again and just buying all the stuff that they're making. And that's the end of the story. That's your future.
That's right. And they don't need to wear a mask on their G6.
I don't know. Do we want to take more of Derek Wilsonson's questions?
I don't know. What are they?
Here you go. What did you discuss with Ali that George disagreed with so vehemently that George set you up on camera on the 6th? I don't believe George set up Peter. Do you think that that's true?
George didn't set me up on camera. I couldn't find George. I noticed when I got back to the hotel that he had been in the same places that I had been, but I didn't see George. George didn't see me. And I don't know what setting me up on camera means.
So you might want to check your assumptions, Derek. That would be my recommendation to you. Okay, that guy's name was Cohen. That's right. He's the guy that owns the Mets.
What did I discuss with Ali that George disagreed with so vehemently?
Who knows?
What did I disagree with? I don't know.
Good question.
Is Derek a Fed? Everybody's a Fed. If you assume everybody's a Fed, then you're going to be okay. I'm a Fed. You're a Fed. Somebody asked me the other day what I thought of somebody, and I said, well, the people that appear in these little squares on your screen, like they're usually true believers. That is, they actually believe what they're saying, okay, or they're working for some nationalist intelligence community outlet, or they're working for a globalist intelligence community outlet. If you assume it's one of those three things,
they could be a combination too. I think there are a lot of true believers that work for those things.
Oh well, everybody starts out as a true believer and then they get co-opted. So
yeah,
because they teach you true believerness in school.
Yes, they do. They teach you to say the Pledge of Allegiance was written as a marketing scheme to sell American flags.
There was a video that went around a couple of days ago. Somebody asked somebody who was on the Los Angeles City Council to say the Pledge of Allegiance at the beginning of the day, and they didn't know the words. And they said, "I pledge allegiance to the flag." And then it went on. There was
the thing, yeah.
You know the thing. Unless there's a sudden loss of cabin pressure at the G6, at which time the masks appear. George has been a lifelong friend of mine, geo observation, and he has always been one of the funniest people in the room.
That was a good one. I think that was a good one to end it on.
Indeed. All right, with that, should we go?
Well, we got to remind everybody we've got the Telegram going now, and there's links to all this stuff at therealityos.com. And we will see. Thank you. I thought so. Citadel is Robinhood's largest investor. Yes.
Am I supposed to post some pictures of Trump on the locals?
Post pictures of Trump on the locals. The link to the locals is in the description on YouTube, and it's also on our website as well. So
it's also on our Twitter feeds on our link trees.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Isn't it in how their system operates that their actual power is in the bank? Yeah.
Isn't it how there's? Okay, Isn't it how their system operates and functions that their actual power is in the bank?
In the bank. Correct.
The poetic power to them is not the people, capital P. To these, slime money becomes their last swamp stronghold. Well, it's not the last stronghold. It is the stronghold. I mean, that's Tracy and I have talked about this before. Money is magic. And the power that it has is the control over the entire population. It's why Jesus turned over the tables with the moneylenders. I mean, he was trying to tell us something. When money is the thing that everybody worships, then Satan controls the world, and that's where we are. So when people stop worrying about money, which I can't see happening in the near future, then although it might happen, because if they try to do this great reset thing and it doesn't work out the way that they think that it's going to, H.G. Wells mentioned 100 years ago that there could be a generation or two of problems. And I think that we're heading into that.
I don't know. It'll be that long. I'm a little more optimistic on the whole thing.
Well, there is internet speed that they weren't taking advantage of back
There's
then.
a whole bunch of stuff they weren't taking
Yeah.
into account. But yeah, join the locals, and Peter and I will share a little bit more about the creepy stuff and some of the interesting stuff we've heard on the Clubhouse app over there. So you have to join and become a supporting member to hear that, all that dirt.
Indeed. All right. And get on Clubhouse if you can. Just
Yeah.
so
If
that
you've
you can
got
see
iPhones, let us know because we've got invites.
stereo doesn't make you join, but if you want to, well, I'll leave this with one thought. My friend Merkley joined stereo, and he seems to be addicted to it because my phone is always going, Merkley is on stereo, Merkley is on stereo, Merkley is on stereo. And I was talking to Merkley the other day about a shocking finding that he had discovered, which was that most of the people that he talks to on stereo have no internal dialogue. That is, their thoughts come straight out of their mouth, that they don't think about anything that they're saying, and that they don't believe that that's actually a thing, that there's a difference between what they're thinking and what they're saying. And he found that astounding and difficult to comprehend.
Well, it's almost like you and I have talked about this before. I put it down to the thinking fast and slow. And what you've mentioned before, you'll say when somebody says something that you disagree with, maybe politically, you'll say something like, "Oh, it's really interesting that you think that." And I think what you're doing by saying that to them is making them actually stop and think for the first time about what's coming out of their mouths.
Yep.
So that goes to tell Merkley to try to start doing that and see if he can throw people instead of jumping on them. Because I mean, the reflex is just to be like, "Oh my God, you're an idiot. How do you believe that?" But if you do what you do, it's disarming. And then they'll have to sit and think, do I actually think that? Or am I just repeating stuff that I've heard?
Well, I dip in and I listen to Merkley talking to the same person. He keeps having the same conversation with different people.
What conversations are you having with them?
The people are there's a large percentage of the people on stereo are people of color, and they're talking about privilege, and they're talking about systemic racism and things like that. And he's using very similar arguments each time to try to convince them that their belief system isn't in line with his reality. So if we support malice on locals, do we automatically belong to the Reality OS?
No.
No, you have to follow us. So there's different levels on locals. There's free levels and there's paid levels. And so I think, do we have a $5 level, Tracy?
Yes, that's the only level that we've got. And you can give us more than that.
Right. And on the free, so basically you have to follow us to be, so I posted some pictures of the agriculture department before we went on today. And if you're just on locals and you don't follow us, you can't see that. If you follow us, you can see that. And then for people who follow us and then subscribe, which means paying something, then there'll be other stuff. But we haven't done that yet.
Yeah, it's kind of a combination of Patreon and a Facebook like group or a Facebook private group. So everybody can talk on the wall, and there's stuff that would be behind a paywall that's limited to the active supporters of the Reality OS.
Indeed.
So Peter's going to go drop his Trump photos there. He put up his occult DC. Look at what we found at the Department of Agriculture, weird stuff. And
Really weird.
We'll post a video sometime this week where we talk about what we've heard on Clubhouse.
Indeed.
Yeah. And thank you, Infidel. He's right. See, these are things that we should be saying, but this is why we need so many associate producers.
Yep. Leave a thumbs up to help the YouTube algorithm.
And remember to subscribe and hit the notification bell, because we'll hold down the YouTube as long as we can, but we got backups everywhere.
Indeed.
Yeah. It is Ruben's thing, it's locals.
It is.
That's correct.
And now it's who's the Overstock guy? Byrne?
Oh, Patrick Byrne.
Patrick Byrne put money into it too.
And so did Scott Adams.
Yeah, so Scott Adams, Patrick Byrne.
Oh, thank you very much.
All right, thank you, CJ. We will
Yes, Clubhouse is an app.
It is.
Go
Get
type
it.
in Clubhouse scandal into your favorite search engine. I'm serious. There was a good one last summer.
All right. Very good. Talk to you guys later.